I'm going to tell you guys a story today about how a tweet changed my life. And it's going to be based on the assumption that all of you guys know what Twitter is. Otherwise, the story is going to be a little more difficult to tell. So, first a little backstory about myself. Go back to 2009. I was working as a product manager for a startup company, and I loved my job. I absolutely loved it. Then the economy took a turn, and I lost that job. And I spent 9 months unemployed, unable to find a position. And when I finally did get a job, it was working in customer support with a headset, not as cool as this, helping people with things like password recovery. And so during this time of unemployment, I chose to maintain my hobbies and interests, which were dealing and collecting in antiques and collectibles, particularly military collectibles, and also collecting vintage apparel. And at that point in time, I had the idea that I wanted a vintage commercial sewing machine, something robust that I'd be able to sew leather and heavy canvas with. So I did some looking, and I found one on Craigslist. So after a little bit of time, I got proficient at that, and I was using it to repair things, but also to make things for myself and for other people. Then I had a new thought in my mind. I thought, well, what if I designed a product, and I made it, and I sold it on the internet, and the sales that I had from that would offset the cost of this machine. So I didn't put a ton of thought into it, and I just thought, well, what's a quick way to get this done? So I chose a website called Etsy. Now, Etsy is it's an e-commerce site for artisans that can sell their handmade items. And within like 10 minutes, I had a store put together, and I had some pieces of inventory up there. And within a couple days, I was selling stuff, and so that was great. It wasn't quit your day job stuff, but it was nice. So also at that time, I was following several websites and Twitter feeds about things that interested me. I'm really into DIY, I'm into men's style, I'm into design, and one of the sites that I was following is called A Continuous Lean, and it's run by a gentleman named Michael Williams. Michael is from Ohio, so he's Midwest like me, but he lives in New York now, and he writes about things that interest me. I'm very much into traditional style, I'm into American made, and he's a good writer. I liked what he had to say. So I was also following his Twitter feed. Michael has over 22,000 followers. So as I assume you guys already know about Twitter, you have the functionality where you can make or broadcast a tweet, and there's functionality where people can reply to that. So you can actually, technically can have dialogue. But with somebody like Michael, who has over 22,000 followers, that idea of me having dialogue with him was not a reality, or so I thought. Because one evening, I was checking my Twitter feed, and I read what Michael Williams had to say, and he had made this tweet. Not a great price, but these are good looking. So, and there's a link going to another page. So I clicked on that link, and I took a look at that. And to my surprise, Michael was referring to a set of 5 aluminum mid-century good form chairs. They're based on an Emeco design. And where that was important to me was I was the one that won that auction earlier that afternoon. So here I've been following this guy for almost a year now, and never felt like I had a relevant reason to make a reply to anything. I just didn't want to do that. So it was like the clouds parted at that moment, and I thought, I have an actual opportunity to communicate with this individual, at least hopefully. So I quickly made this tweet. I said, I won these, and with local pickup, I didn't think the price was that bad. So immediately after making that, I remember just sitting on my bed. I had my fingers crossed, I had my eyes closed, and I thought, please, look at this reply. Just look at it, Please be intrigued enough by my Twitter handle, which is Artifact Bags, to look at my profile, which said that I live in Omaha, Nebraska, and I make these handmade bags and aprons using the artisanal process. Be interested or intrigued enough to look at that link that's in my profile, which at that time would take you to my Etsy page. So I thought about this for a moment, and then I got on with my night or my day. And within a short amount of time, my phone starts blowing up. I start getting these email alerts saying, you've got a sale, you've got a sale, you've got a sale. So then I go to my laptop, I look at the Twitter feed, and Michael Williams makes this tweet. Wax canvas lunch bag is nice looking. Hot damn. He's referring to my number 215 wax canvas and Horian leather lunch tote that was at that time for sale on Etsy. That moment was huge because, as I said, I was unemployed for 9 months, then I was underemployed. Let's just say I was a little downtrodden. So to have somebody like Michael validate one of my designs that I made, that was huge. But then the other part of that was the sales that followed this tweet. That's proof of concept. I had created something that resonated with people, and they were buying it. They were giving me their money. That's the best validation. And this was great. I was on a cloud for a while, but then things settled, and I went back to what I was doing. I was going to work at 6:45 in the morning. I was doing, helping people with their password recovery, and then I'd go home and I'd work really hard on my site. But one thing that happened when Michael made that tweet, my process mentally changed. It was no longer Artifact Bags, it was now Artifact Bag Company. And I wasn't just an artisan in my basement making these bags, I was the owner of a company. And my responsibility from that point was to build my brand, to build a dedicated website where I would sell these products directly to my customer, and to start really telling my story. So at that time, I was dealing in antiques and collectibles and stuff, but then I started to use those resources, those pickers, those leads I had. Instead of having them find me those other things that I would deal with, I said, find me surplus equipment. Find me stuff wherever you're looking in your barns and your places that I can refurbish these and put them into production so that I can use them to make these products. And over time, that started to get traction, but I continued to work doing the customer support. So fast forward to December of 2010, Michael Williams of A Continuous Lean, he does a brilliant thing, and he has a campaign where he makes a tweet on the hour, every hour, for 24 hours about something you should buy somebody for Christmas, but then buy one for yourself as well. Michael hadn't forgotten about me because my lunch tote was number 4 in that list. And once again, clouds part, I'm like floating in the air. I am blown away. So that was the tweet that I'm referring to. Now, that was great, but I didn't know at that time that this tweet right here was going to change my life. Because as I mentioned, he has over 22,000 followers. A lot of those people were very influential people that were following him, because literally within days of his tweet, I was receiving product reviews in Uncrate, New York Times, Gizmodo, TechCrunch, Selectism. I didn't know up from down. All I knew is that I'm going to this job at 6:45 in the morning, and I have hundreds of bags that need to be made. Hundreds. But it was, I had this thing, and it's like your logic brain says, you don't want to quit this job. You got health insurance, And health insurance has prevented so many people from taking that entrepreneurial leap. And it was December 28th, I'm sitting in my cubicle with my headset, and it was the Gizmodo one that dropped. And it's just hundreds of bags coming in. And I just made this decision at that point. I said, for every minute I spend here in this cubicle, that's a minute that's being taken away from building my company. So I took my headset down and I went to my supervisor and I said, I'm sorry, I don't usually do this on such short notice, but I have to leave. And she's like, why, when? I go, I have to leave now. Right now, I'm sorry. But I told her, and she was cool with it, and she walked me out. I gave her my badge. I walked to the parking lot, and I never looked back. And, things just continue to blossom and happen and happen. And so, why am I telling you this story right now? Well, for a couple reasons. One, I'm hoping there's a little bit of entertainment value. Two, the theme of TED Talk is about influence. Well, I'm telling you a story about a guy in New York who has tremendous influence. He disseminates ideas all over the world. Now, most of them are about men's style. I think that's great. But what he also did is he enabled someone like me to be successful and do something I really love. And the third thing, how do I phrase this? I daydream all the time. I always have, and I always will, and I hope that you guys daydream too. But when Michael made these tweets and these beautiful things happen, they reminded me at a time when I was very, very frustrated that good things happen all the time. You just have to be ready for them and aware. And from that point on, I started doing something that I would call, now I'm losing my train of thought, planning for success. So when I'm spending all this time daydreaming, I spend a portion of that time thinking about these like pie-in-the-sky scenarios where it's like, what if this happened? Wouldn't that be grand? If this thing happened, if this occurred. And then I spend the remainder of that moment thinking, all right, let's say it did happen right now. What are you going to do? How are you going to respond to that? Because when really great things happen, oftentimes there's a level of emotional preparedness that you have to be ready for, psychological preparedness, and then not to mention the logistics of actually making this thing happen. So I can't tell you how many times since 2010 that I would cook up these pie-in-the-sky fantasies of like, what if this happened? And then they did. But the good part about it is I'd already laid down a lot of that groundwork. In the internet age, timing is critical. So for me to have had the advantage of already working through this stuff, knowing how I would emotionally feel about this type of thing, because my brand is very important to me and I have to protect it. And a lot of times you get presented these opportunities that at face value, they seem like they're great, but for the longevity of your brand, you could be damaging it. But what I'd like to think as a takeaway is when you guys are spending your time daydreaming, if you allocated just a portion of that for planning for success, I'm confident that great things are going to happen for you guys as well. Thank you.